start at quarterback. Tyler Van Dyke, of course, had that amazing 8-9 game breakout in 2021, where he was arguably the best quarterback in the country for about 2 months. Last year, we could much debate as to whether he really decreased in regards to his production personally. Of course, the offensive line, the receivers let him down. And then the injuries, of course, is going to affect anyone. So your thoughts about TVD bouncing back after 10 touchdowns and 5 picks last year?
Yeah, with Tyler Van Dyke, there's a lot to unfold with someone like him, right? You first and foremost, you talk a lot about the productivity, which is what everyone looks for in a quarterback, right? And I think the biggest difference you saw from last year to 2021, not just the wins total on the season, but you also got to look at the stats a little bit more deeper, right? You had the same, you pretty much had the same completion percentage from last year to the year prior. Maybe I think it was from 63 to 62%. Like you mentioned, he only had 10 touchdowns, 5 interceptions last year, but the year prior with Rhett Lashley, I think he had like 25 touchdowns and 6 interceptions, had 1,000 passing yards more than what he did have last year. And there was only a 1-game difference. So it wasn't like he wasn't playing in a lot less games, but yet the productivity was significantly different. And when you really look at that, Mark, you really have to look at the offensive coordinator as well. Having a guy like Rhett Lashley 2 years ago, it was someone that he was a lot more similar with as far as game style. It was someone that kind of gave him the reins, the control as a quarterback, right? If you're the main guy in charge, you're calling the audibles, you're calling the plays at the line of scrimmage. You need to have full control when things break down or when you want to call that audible. And those were things that a guy like Rhett Lashley definitely allowed Tyler Van Dyke to have. Now, when you fast forward to this last season with Josh Gaddis, Burrow's award winner, he didn't really fit the same play style of a guy like Tyler Van Dyke. Not to mention, he didn't really give him the necessarily reins to have that control as a quarterback last year. Between the relationship that you have, not only with your offensive coordinator, but then having another guy in between it as your quarterback coach, and Frank Ponce, who again was another guy that had his hand in the mix and wasn't necessarily on the same page as your offensive coordinator. You start to throw a couple more, curveballs into the mix as a starting quarterback in college football. Either way, you still got to get it done. And between, the injuries, like you said, and just him not being able to perform on a week-to-week basis, you saw a young man in Jakari Brown, who came in for, I believe, 5 games last year, wasn't able to keep that red shirt last year, had one big game against Georgia Tech where he had 3 touchdowns, really took control of that football game. But I look for this football season, as far as the quarterback room, I look for someone like Jakari Brown to hopefully be able to redshirt this year, because he's already came out and said point blank, hey, I would love to redshirt this year. I think I need another year to really learn the system and just the control and what college football is. And I think this is the year for Tyler Van Dyke to really take control of not only the offense, but control of his destiny. If he wants to be an NFL quarterback, this is going to be his money year to really just prove it to everyone, including himself, that he can be a Sunday quarterback. And he's got a lot of pressure on him, not only because of how he performed last year, but also, some of the things that was going on off the football field going into this football season. There were some talks about, between his agent and another school of creating that leverage of possibly leaving the program of Miami and hitting the transfer portal and going to another program over in Alabama. But that was something that obviously ended up not happening. So Tyler Van Dyke has a lot of eyes on him, whether it's the fan base, whether it's the NFL scouts, or just, all the haters that don't like him as well. But I think this is a make or break year for Tyler Van Dyke. He's going to have to perform in order for this football team to perform this year.
Brad, you bring up the importance of the offensive coordinator, and that's the case everywhere, but specifically to TVD and his development and him having to work under 3 different coordinators. And now Shannon Dawson, impressive resume elsewhere, based not just on the numbers, but everything that you can put together about his background. Are you optimistic that he gets TVD back on track?
Oh, absolutely. Just because, first and foremost, he's very similar to Rhett Lashley. He's very quarterback innovative. The relationship that you're already seeing between Shannon Dawson and Tyler Van Dyke seems to be night and day from what he's had from Josh Gaddis and Frank Ponce last year. And again, it's an offensive coordinator that understands that the quarterback needs a lot of control in the offense, which he's being able to do again this football season. And he just feels a lot more comfortable when you're able to listen to Tyler Van Dyke speak in interviews and just talking to him as well. You know, these are just things where you can just tell this football season he seems a little bit more relaxed, not having to overthink a lot. That was his problem last year. He was overthinking way too much, whether it was his receivers or just trusting himself at the line of scrimmage. And those are things that I think is going to get fixed this year.
Jake Garcia off to Missouri. Is it Jakari Brown, no doubt, as the backup, or is there a battle there?
You know, I think it's got to be Jakari Brown as the backup. I think Emory Williams, when you look at him on the practice field, he fits right in this quarterback room. He actually towers over Jakari Brown. He's actually probably the biggest stature-wise in the quarterback room already as a true freshman. And as crazy as it sounds, he's probably the most accurate quarterback in our quarterback room right now is probably Emory Williams. But I do think, you know, he needs at least a year to kind of just get familiar with college football, understanding the game speed. And this will be a great opportunity for him to do that. But I would expect Tyler Van Dyke to hopefully play all year this year, perform very well, and still allow someone like Jakari Brown to play 4 games this year and still be able to keep that red shirt.